All right. Well, hey everyone. Welcome to Finding Your Way Value Mapping as a Guide. My name is Kristen Costa, and I'm part of Octave's communication team, and I'm excited to welcome you here today. Before we get to jump into the main event, wanted to just share a few things with y'all. First, to share a little bit more about Octave if you're curious to learn more. We're a modern practice focusing on making mental health care more affordable. We're in 7 different states where we do a mix of in person and virtual therapy. We offer individual, couples, and family therapy. But the really big thing to know about us is that we partner with different insurance companies to help make mental health care more affordable and high quality. Now, a little bit of housekeeping before we jump in today. This is going to be a pretty interactive workshop, so make sure that you have your worksheet ready for value mapping. Should have been emailed to you, but if you don't have that handy, that's okay. We'll drop a link here so y'all can open it up and get it ready. Also, a pen and paper would do just fine, your notes app too, to take some notes today as you try to find your values. We won't be having a Q&A today, but that doesn't mean you won't get your questions answered. Feel free to use the Q&A box and we can try to answer your questions as we go along. Senior Clinical Director and Provider Diane Monty is going to be on the line to help with select questions as much as she can, as well as some of our other teammates here. And lastly, keep an eye out for a post-workshop survey. We want to make sure to get your feedback and learn from y'all today so that we can make these workshops better and better every time. And now for the exciting part, I get to introduce you to our amazing clinicians who are going to walk us through this workshop today, starting off with Amanda Luciano, an Octave therapist based in the Bay Area in California. She has over a decade of experience in therapy where she specializes in life transitions, anxiety, grief, and so much more. And Haley Perez is a clinician working in Southern California who has a knack for working with clients through life transitions, stress, burnout, and so much more. And today they're going to help you all find your values. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen, for that wonderful intro. And Haley, we're back. We're very excited to be here with everybody today. So, yeah, I wanted to start today with this face, familiar face. She also happens to be the inspiration behind my future Comic-Con costume coming up. But she is Wednesday Addams from the newest Netflix adaptation of Wednesday. And I am also somebody that gets a little upset when I hear spoilers. So I want to stay mindful in case anyone has not seen Wednesday, the show yet. But the show kicks off with Wednesday going through a pretty big life transition where she leaves her old school and she begins at Nevermore boarding school. So she's starting this new academic journey. She's moving away from home, she's away from her family, and essentially has to, rebuild her social network as well. So just a lot of big changes. So from Wednesday's examples, you're probably already getting a sense of, what a life transition is, but it's basically any big change or multiple changes that occur. And they can be the mark of a new beginning, the start of a new journey as well. And it's also a time when people may even start to evaluate or reevaluate what's important to them. So some other examples of life transitions include graduating from school, maybe there's been a milestone in your physical health as well, starting a new career. And so when you go through life transitions like Wednesday did, they can throw us off balance and off our routines. And we see this in the show as well. But we see that Wednesday actually, she learns to lean into her values in order to just better adapt to these big changes that are happening for her. So we know she's a fictional character, but we spent some time trying to figure out what her core values may have been. And among them, we found that probably perseverance and authenticity were two of them. So even when when her peers didn't quite understand her, she didn't let that stop her from reaching her goals. I want to say more, but spoilers. And then as far as authenticity too, she really embraced her uniqueness. And this is how we end up with that amazing and iconic Wednesday dance. So we'll take a quick step back here from Tim Burton's fantastical world of Wednesday, just to tune into our own experiences. So we actually have a quick poll for you here. Have you recently gone through a life transition, or maybe you're currently going through a life transition? So I'll give you a moment here to answer that. And in the meantime, some other life transitions too would be like maybe a big move, maybe an ending of a relationship. I know that when I got my dog as a puppy, that was a really big life transition for me as well. I'm sure Haley, you've been through some life transitions as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, so many. Starting a new
Okay.
job.
Yes, exactly. And results are in too. Thanks for doing that so quickly. So it looks like a vast majority of you all have recently gone through one or are currently going through a life transition. And if you're not, maybe you've experienced one in the past as well. But being aware of life transitions, it plays a role in some of the values work we're going to do today as well. So Haley, I'll pass it off to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about life transition?
Definitely. Okay, so let's take a deeper dive into what a life transition can feel like, because it can feel like you're in survival mode on autopilot or feeling stuck and lost. So, when I'm saying autopilot, it can be thought of when you're driving on the freeway and you are so into the music or lost in your thoughts that you accidentally miss your exit. Because I know I've done that once or twice. And I'm sure this can happen often in life when you notice that you're going about your day, but you're not actually experiencing or are really present for the day. And that's when you're noticing that you're feeling like you're in survival mode. So, when going through a life transition or just having a desire to reflect, values can add a sense of direction. A symbolic image of a compass comes to my mind when I think of values because a compass helps a person when they're feeling lost. So, using values or your compass, it can be a tool to creating your own map in life. Amanda, are you ready to share with everyone what our plan is for the rest of the day?
Yes, definitely. So I am a very visual learner. So I like seeing kind of what's coming down the pipeline. So we have a little roadmap here for you for today, because when it comes to values too, there's just a lot of different components. So we wanted to just make sure we're breaking it down for you into smaller pieces here. So first we'll learn, and this is where we look at values and their role in mental health and also in the therapeutic process. And then we'll transition to engage. And this is where we get into the guided values mapping exercise, where you all will get to take action and begin identifying your own core values. And then finally determine, which is a really important part of this too, where we look at the how, and this is how we can actually live according to those core values. So Haley, I will let you take it from here and help us define values.
All right. One of the most important things to define in this workshop is values. So let's get clear on what they are. Values are individual beliefs that motivate people to act one way or another, and they serve as a guide for human behavior. Values are influenced, formed, and found through many different sources, including lived experience, family, culture, religion, friends, social media and pop culture, and our environment. So let's dive into a little psychology history. Erik Erikson was a German psychologist who created a psychosocial development theory in the 1950s. I know, a really long time ago, but still really relevant today. Just looking at the stages, adolescence can be seen as an important part of when we begin creating our own values. This stage is called identity versus role confusion. This is when we ask ourselves, who am I? And really finding our identity outside of our family unit. But it's important to reflect on our values at different stages in our life. That's what we're doing today. We commonly hear people say something like, well, I value everything. Just like when you're driving on a road, you can't drive in every direction and still feel like you have direction. If you value everything, then nothing is really a core catalyst in your life. Or if you try to value too many things, it can lead to burnout. It's like trying to cook all the time with all your stove burners and your oven going at the same time. So keep this in mind when we go through this workshop today and challenge yourself to find and embrace your top values.
you'll likely have two or three. Now, let's dive deeper into why values are important with Amanda.
Sounds good. So, we often see that one of the biggest activators for psychological distress is losing sight of the values that are most important to us. And so, this could contribute to increased stress, depression, anxiety, and it can even make healing and recovery and therapy challenging as well. But what we see is that when we're in touch with our values, that can lead us to living more fulfilled lives and experiencing more genuine joy as well. And I found a really great example of this in a book called A Liberated Mind by Stephen C. Hayes. He's a clinical psychologist and also the founder of acceptance and commitment therapy, which we'll get into in just a little bit here. But he shares this story of a client that he worked with who came for some support around depression. And this client also experienced a lot of apathy as well. And so the therapist said, okay, so here's some homework for you to think about over the next week. Um, I want you to lean into any emotional discomfort that you have and just see what you notice. So, this client is out at a fast food restaurant and sees a family eating with their two children. And this client was like, okay, I feel something here. So, leans into that and realizes there's a lot of sadness and a lot of pain. And reports this back to the therapist, and the therapist and client actually run into each other several years later, and this client now has a partner and a new baby as well. And so, in this example, we really see the importance of recognizing one's own values. So, this client was able to recognize a core value that maybe he didn't notice before, which we could say is family, and was able to start a family of his own. So, goals and values are not the same. So, on the surface, they can sound pretty similar, and there is a lot of overlap as well. But when we say values, values are really more present oriented because we strive to live them in the day to day, which is essentially part of what, that's part of their power to just keep us motivated. With goals, they are future oriented because it's something we're striving for. And then once we actually accomplish the goal, then it kind of ends up in the past, where again, values are kind of ever present. So goals are basically the specific ways that we decide to live out our values. So we have a lovely photo here of Half Dome. So maybe your goal is to climb Half Dome, but your value could be adventure or accomplishment. And then when once you climb Half Dome, that value of accomplishment doesn't end. You may just now want to find another way to live out that value. So just remember that you can't cross the value off your to-do list. So what do values mean in therapy? Haley and I wanted to share just a little bit more about how active therapists utilize values-based work in therapy.
So, before we talk about a couple specific types of therapy, I want to shed some light on our overall approach, which is based on cultural humility. That means that every therapist respects you as the expert on your life. We acknowledge and honor that everyone has their own unique culture, beliefs, and life experiences. We bring that lens of cultural humility into everything that we do, including this conversation today. So now, we'll share more about two specific types of evidence-based modalities or well-researched type of therapies that a therapist might use to help you generally and to find your values. So let's start with cognitive behavior therapy. CBT is a structured, goal-oriented type of talk therapy focusing on thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. One element of CBT is values clarification, where a therapist will work with a client to help them pinpoint their personal value system. And also, exploring moral dilemmas during session can help you find your values, and in turn, values can help you confront moral dilemmas. So, by focusing on values, it can help us set more flexible goals that are more responsive to the client's values. Values guided therapy helps clients make that shift from setting rigid goals to being more flexible with expectations and enjoying the journey.
So another evidence-based or research-backed therapy modality that we use here at Octave is acceptance and commitment therapy, also called ACT. And this is a very mindful-based therapy, which is something I really love about it. And like CBT, it's also behavior-based. But with CBT, that works to change or challenge unhelpful or disruptive thoughts. And with ACT, it helps people accept that pain and discomfort are a part of life. So something that ACT focuses on is increasing what's called psychological flexibility. And this is essentially just the ability to be open to your present experience, which could be your thoughts, your feelings, maybe memories that you have, and be able to adapt to challenges while you can remain true to your values. And you can better understand psychological flexibility when we look at its opposite, which would be psychological rigidity. And this is when we might try to alleviate pain by ruminating, worrying, distracting ourselves, something that I know I've certainly done. And when it becomes a chronic thing that you're doing, that can be a significant factor in mental health diagnoses and challenges. And ACT doesn't focus on treating what's considered abnormal, but it sees pain and suffering as just a very normal part of the human experience. And I really love this image too, because pain is often used as a flashlight to really help highlight what's truly important to us. So one of the goals in this therapy is to actually learn to turn towards the discomfort or pain in order to alleviate it, rather than avoiding the distress in order to feel better, which can sometimes prove to be pretty futile as well. So a really good example of this is when you think of a salmon swimming upstream. You know, you're expending a lot of energy, you're swimming against the current, but you're not really having any forward movement there. So the goal is really, it's not to change our mind's thought, but instead to change the relationship we have to the thought. And then to learn to have openness to that distressing thought and stay present while we continue to actually engage in the things that are important to us as well. And when we actually know what's important to us, our values, we can take a step in that direction, even when we encounter very painful or anxious or depressed thoughts.
One more example that came to my mind, as you know, I'm a big Disney fan. So the Disney movie Inside Out, where Joy was constantly trying to hide sadness, but at the end of the movie, Joy realized that sadness was just as important to her. Right? I love that movie.
Yes. Um, so we looked at how values are viewed when discussing mental health and therapy. So now we actually get into the good stuff and begin engaging. So Haley and I are going to lead you through an activity to help identify core values. And we really want you to be able to walk away today with not only more understanding of values and why they're important, but with a greater recognition of what your own values may be. So we have some guidelines here for you that we just want to encourage, and this is just to make sure that you can get the most out of the values mapping exercise. So first, remember that this is for you. So values are so very deeply personal and all about you. So as you do the exercise, just know that there's no pressure to share any of your reflections or values with us or anyone else. We want this to be a safe and honest space for you. Also, remove any shoulds. So it's okay to be influenced by family, culture, work, friends, but ultimately really choose the values that resonate with you. So if you're thinking, oh, I should choose family, otherwise mom's going to be really disappointed in me, maybe, but choose what's for you. And then embrace selectivity. This one always reminds me of Coachella. And I'm a big Coachella goer, and if you've been to a music festival of any kind, you know that there are many acts going on at the same time. And you often have to choose which musical performance you want to see over another. So it's okay to be really selective here. And just because you choose to see one musical act over another doesn't mean that other one's not important. It's just you resonate more with one. And that's the same thing here when you're choosing values. Choosing one over another doesn't mean the other one's not important. You're just choosing what resonates. It's also okay if you choose more than, well, it's okay to choose the same value more than once. And then lastly, strike values that don't resonate. Narrowing our focus is a really good thing here. So remember that it's okay to cross off values from the list that don't actually fit. Okay, so to start our exercise, we have a question to get us rooted and just clear the canvas before we dive in. So let's imagine that you woke up one morning and everything was your version of perfect. So think about that for a second. And what does that day look like? And how do you spend your day? And who are you with? And maybe think about how you feel as well. And hold that image of your perfect day in your mind. And Haley is going to take us through a short guided meditation.
Perfect. Now that you have that image in your mind, I'm going to walk you through a couple minutes of mindful breathing. So let's begin by taking a moment to allow your body to settle in a comfortable position. You may close your eyes or keep them slightly open, allowing the spine to lift, the shoulders to soften. Today we'll be practicing a couple minutes of mindful breathing. Begin by taking a full breath in and a long breath out, allowing the breath to settle the body and settle the mind. Feel your chest and stomach gently rising and falling with each breath. We're now going to count a few breaths silently. So on your next inhale, count silently to yourself. 1. And as you exhale, 1. On your next breath, count again. 2. Now, continue counting your breath for a few more breaths. You may notice the mind is wandering. Just bring it gently back to the breath. Perhaps feeling the passage of air through your nostrils, or the movement of your chest as you inhale and as you exhale. Now with one final breath, breathing in and breathing out, noticing any sensations or feelings in the body. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes and we will get started. Okay, now is the time to take out your values list, your values worksheet. And if you don't have it, like you didn't print it, completely okay. We also have a QR code that you can scan with your phone. And next, we will engage in an exercise to help you recognize your values.
And Haley, I love that meditation. Thank you for that. So you all should have, as Haley was saying, you should have your values list out in front of you here. And so we're going to go through some questions to really get the reflection wheels turning. So as we go through these questions together, I want you to look at the values list in front of you as you're reflecting on these questions too. So to start, let's think about how you typically start your day. So imagine, what is my ideal morning routine, and really try to get down into the nitty-gritty. So think about, okay, do I always feed the dog first thing in the morning? Or maybe you're somebody that makes the bed before you do anything else. Or perhaps you're somebody that gets ready for the day, brushes your teeth, washes your face. Um, Maybe also think, do I stop into the breakfast nook and say good morning to my partner or my family? Or maybe, you're somebody that likes to hop into, your laptop, check your calendar. So again, look at the list in front of you and note the value or values that come to mind. And now think about the relationships in your life. And this could be, family, friends, classmates, peers, partners, colleagues, all the things. And think about, what kind of connection do you want to have with each of them? And another great reflection question here is, how do I currently communicate with these people, these relationships in my life, especially in times of conflict? How do you communicate during times of conflict? And what about in times of joy as well? Maybe something really exciting happened and you want to share that with somebody. How do you communicate that? Another really helpful question here is to think about relationships that you maybe have actually walked away from. So, what values were represented in that relationship? So, maybe you had a partner whose value was career, and that wasn't something that resonated with you. And if that's the case, then maybe that's a value that you can actually cross off of your list. So go ahead and, again, with that list in front of you, select the values that really describe what you're looking for in your close relationships. And now think about a time that you felt very deeply fulfilled, when your cup was feeling full, so to speak. Was your cup overflowing? Think about, what were you doing at this moment in time when you felt very fulfilled? And what was the environment like around you as well? Where were you? Maybe you were home, cozy on the couch, and that felt really good. Or maybe you were out and about with friends. And maybe also think about, what need or desire was met in this situation as well, when we're feeling very fulfilled. And go ahead and mark the values that align with your feelings during that very deep time of fulfillment. So I've definitely given you lots to think about here. So I want to give you a moment to look over your list, maybe to take some notes as well, think through these questions. Haley and I will be hopping off of camera just to give you some reflection space, but we will be back in a moment to share the next series of questions that we have for you all. Okay, so we are back and let's take a look now at the next set of questions that we have. So, most of us, I would say, were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic in some way. And it was absolutely a time when core values were probably challenged without a lot of us even knowing that they were. And so, think about what was one way that you were impacted by the pandemic. Think about, did this impact create stress or challenge for you? And if it did, how? In what way? I know for me, movement is something that I value very much, and a lot of the gyms were obviously closed, and I didn't feel comfortable being outside for walks. Maybe that was the same for you, or maybe it was something like travel, because travel was more challenging at that time. Maybe it was that you lived with somebody who was immunocompromised. So really think about what that challenge might have been for you. And also think about what values you may have deprioritized during the pandemic as well. And those could be values that you can cross off the list as well. So think about what you did prioritize, and those would be the values that you would mark on your list as either important or very important. And now think about a mentor or someone that you admire. So, for example, maybe you admire your grandmother because she's always very honest and you love that, and that resonates for you. And so maybe this means you select honesty from the list of values. And so I want you to actually think about three qualities that you like about that person that you admire. And Haley always reminds me that it can also be a fictional character as well, just somebody in your life that you may look up to or admire. So think about three qualities that you really admire and check out that list of values and look for that corresponding value. Okay, we are going to give you a little bit more reflection time here. So Haley and I are going to hop off camera again, but we will be back soon. Okay, and we're back. So I hope that extra reflection time was helpful. And Haley, I will pass it off to you.
Perfect. Now that you've taken the time to mark some values, let's take a look and reflect on what you've marked. Here are some questions that I want you to consider while you're looking at the values that you marked. Which ones are your standout values? Did you select one more than once? And were there any values that may have surprised you? Now, the reason I ask these questions is that sometimes values can be merged or complement each other to ladder up. You might realize that you have a value of curiosity, learning, and growth. But upon deeper reflection, you notice that you're curious and you love to learn because you want growth. So your main value would be growth. So, with that example, I want you to take some time to review the values that you marked to see if any of your values can be merged. Now, I'll go off camera to give you some time to view some values that can be merged. Now, let's try to rank your top three values to help find your core values. I know that this can be hard, so here's a note of encouragement from one of my favorite shows right now, Ted Lasso, reminding you to listen to yourself. I'll go off camera again to give you some time to rank your top values. Okay, now that we've had a chance to rank our top values, let's talk a little bit about what's next. Amanda?
Yes. Okay. So what is next? So I had a surfing instructor once that told me that surfing is really simple in theory, but can be very challenging in practice. And that made a lot of sense to me. You learn the basics, but to really get better at it and improve takes a little bit more time. And I feel like when you are selecting your values, it can be very similar, where you might be able to pick some down, but or pick some out of the list, but narrowing it down um, to your core values can be more of a process and can even be challenging. So remember that it doesn't have to be a one-time process either. You may want to revisit some of these questions again in this exercise for the future. But something that can also help is a litmus test. And a litmus test is just a way to confirm or measure if the value that you selected is a core value. So to do this, I would select one value at a time and ask yourself these questions here. So in times of stress, how challenging has it been to stay true to your core values? This one reminds me a little bit of the COVID-19 slide we had a little earlier. So for example, let's say friends or friendship and connection was a value of yours. Think about how challenging was that during COVID? Were you still able to keep in contact? Maybe you FaceTimed, you texted, and if so, then that connection and friendship might be that core value for you. And then think about, can you see yourself holding these values 10, 20, 30 years from now? And then the last question here is, would you stop living out these values if there was a conflict of interest? So staying with the social connection and friendship example, let's say a friend invites you to go see a movie, but you say no. Um, is friendship and connection still a value? Is that still something you hold as important, even though you said no? It's a small example of a conflict of interest, but these questions in general can really help you narrow down your focus with values. So this litmus test here is a really great tool to take to your journal. You can take it to your therapist as well for just further reflection and exploration.
Now we're going to discuss ways to live out your values. When you think about your values, consider how your actions align with your values. So, my previous example of curiosity, if your value is curiosity, what are you doing to lean into being curious?
Yeah. So what is an energy inventory? This basically captures how you spend your time and energy. Maybe it's through your routines, your habits, maybe it's through things that you do, your actions, because we really see that values work for us when we embody them in our day to day. Because again, values are very present oriented and ever present. So ask yourself, what are your daily, weekly habits and routines? Are there some that maybe don't serve you anymore? Maybe there's some that you want to add in, but you haven't been able to. And if that's the case, maybe exploring what are some of those barriers to doing so. And also looking at how you spend your time just in general. What are you doing throughout your days? And I like this one a lot too, of looking at after you engage in an activity, how do you feel? Maybe you've said yes to doing something and you didn't really want to, and you're feeling kind of depleted of energy after. Or maybe you said yes to something and it was amazing and you feel great. So, really looking at, am I fulfilled after? Am I stressed, excited, tired? And this is just a way to see if how you spend your time actually aligns with those values. And besides remembering to take an energy inventory, it's also really important that we remember to let discomfort and pain be our guide. So earlier in our chat on acceptance and commitment therapy, we looked at how turning towards emotional pain can really help us identify what's important to us. And Haley, I know we're big fans of Brene Brown. And for anyone
Huge.
that's not familiar, yeah, she is a professor and a shame and vulnerability researcher. She's got books and podcasts and TED Talks and all the things. But she has a quote that I really love that kind of sums all of this up as well. She says, pain will subside only when we acknowledge it and care for it. Addressing it with love and compassion would take only a minuscule percentage of the energy it takes to fight it, but approaching pain head on is terrifying. Most of us were not taught how to recognize pain, name it, and be with it. But what we know now is that when we deny our emotion, it owns us. When we own our emotion, we can rebuild and find our way through the pain. And this is from her book, Braving the Wilderness. And so, in a nutshell, basically, if we can name the emotions that we have and turn towards pain, discomfort, anxiety, fear, stress, and identify and live out our values, these are all really helpful pieces of the pie to help us live that fulfilled life.
It's also important to do a social media inventory as well. So, following those accounts that feel more directly in line with your values, or finding a positive hashtag that you align with, or an online group who follows your values. Some other suggestions can be setting time boundaries and intentions with social media strolling, finding ways finding ways to engage with influencers and accounts that align with your values, but also making sure that you're taking time to connect with friends and family in real life too, not just social media.
Yeah, I love that, Haley. It's such a good reminder. I think I'm always trying to be more mindful of my tech use, but easier said than done. And besides the tech check, remember that journaling can be a really powerful tool. So it encourages self reflection, helps us get thoughts out of our head onto paper. It can guide us in therapy. And I read somewhere recently too that it can actually help improve immune function as well, which is pretty cool. So you all can revisit the earlier litmus test that we looked at, as well as the values mapping reflection questions, and take those to your journal. And before you leave today, we wanted to send you with a simple but powerful reflection prompt. What do you need today to nurture yourself? So we're adding the link in the chat, or you can scan this QR code here that'll take you to a site to download the worksheets from today's workshop. And again, this includes the litmus test and the journal prompt as well. And that brings us to our wrap up. Haley, it went so fast.
I
um,
know.
but it was so nice to be here with everybody today. I wish we could have seen everybody's faces. But honestly, no matter how far you got in your values mapping journey today, please remember that you can use the litmus test to narrow down those values to your core values. You can take your inventory of your routines and habits to see where energy is going. You've got Haley's tech check reminder there for you, the journal prompts, and just know that all of these tools are here for you to lean on no matter what season of life you're in.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda and Haley, for leading us through this great exercise today. Definitely feeling a little more in touch with what those core values are, even though it can feel like it takes a lifetime to try to find them. So thanks for helping us make progress today. I hope everyone here also felt like they're able to make progress. Just in case, so you can have things handy, we have those worksheets for you here. If you didn't get to scan your QR code, it's not too late to snag them. And also to access our survey. We'd love to hear from you, hear what you thought, and also hear your ideas of what else you'd like to hear therapists talk about at our workshops. And lastly, I know y'all are going to do your tech check, but please include us in that tech check. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, where we're regularly sharing pieces on our blog from therapists just like Amanda and Haley, who are sharing their expert insights with y'all. So hope that is helpful to you. Thanks again for being here, and we hope y'all have a beautiful day. Take care.